I'm going to bring on someone who's going to help me on this session share with you our collective knowledge. Both of us being coaches, both of us helping people heal through the body, through the mind. His name is Kevin Crenshaw, and he's known better as the Heart Guy on Instagram. If you haven't given him a follow, give him a follow. And there he
What's
is,
up?
Kevin, my man. How you doing, man?
I'm flowing with the go and going with the flow, man.
For those of you on my profile who haven't had the opportunity to meet Kevin yet, Kevin is an amazing guy who loves leading from the heart. Clearly, he's got his profile called the Heart Guy, and he reaches out to people to help them work through their own trauma, to try and find more authenticity within themselves, to find ways to love themselves, show up for their own purpose, show up for their own connection. So, Kevin, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your story before we jump into the meat of the conversation today?
Yeah, a lot of my work is about trauma-informed integration and embodiment. It's how do you find what's keeping you from the things you want, which is what we're going to be talking about today with self-sabotage. And I take a trauma-informed somatic approach to things now. But I mean, my journey, I used to teach group fitness classes. Before that, I was like the shy nerd kid that got picked on. And so falling into the work that I do now, it kind of all ties together. So I approach things from like a ton of different angles, and we can dive into that on our conversation today. But what really lights me up is helping people to break free of the patterns that are showing up in their love life specifically. They have certain patterns in their intimate connections with people or anybody that's close to them, and how to break free of that, because ultimately you're the constant. I have a belief that you're 50% of the problem and 100% of the solution. And it's taking ownership and making an internal shift, because we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And when we can actually fall into understanding that and taking that ownership, we can do our work to not just open our hearts and the cliche things to say, but actually magic happen in your life. And we are the ones in the way. So it's breaking free of the self-sabotage, which I'm excited to talk about today.
Exactly. So thank you on that note. Thank you for telling us, Kevin, about what you do and how you do it. But I want to jump straight into the topic right now of self-sabotage. So self-sabotage by itself, and I'll come back to you for a definition in just a second, but self-sabotage by itself is so explanatory in the subject, in the name of the word self-sabotage, getting in our way. And I was doing some research actually, and I came across this definition by a neuroscientist, a research piece that they put in, where they said self-sabotage occurs when we destroy ourselves physically, mentally, or emotionally, or deliberately, hinder our own success and well-being by undermining personal goals and values. It's by Brenner, written in 2019. It is insidious, profound, and universal, and emanates from negative mindsets, which obviously I don't like the last part, because, the negative mindset, I think, is more a conditioning piece and a judgment label, rather than it is like, oh, you have a negative mindset. It's all limiting beliefs. So, Kevin, why don't you tell me what you define as self-sabotage in a very open and relatable way for people?
Very intelligently convincing yourself to lower your standards or not to go after the things that you desire out of either legitimate fears and or very good reasons. Which, yeah, a lot of the ways we self-sabotage can be unconscious. Then you start to become conscious of it, and then it gets frustrating.
Right.
Why is this pattern still happening? What the fuck?
Right.
Yeah, a lot of times it's very intelligent what's happening. When I look at self-sabotage, and there's a lot of talk with my clients, and even in my own practice, we really want to hold it in a sense that you don't want to make yourself wrong for doing it. It may be ineffective at getting the things that you want. You're not speaking your voice. You're not going out there and starting the business. You're not asking that person out. There's something that's not happening. Or it could be sabotaging receiving love.
Right.
And essentially, if we strip the mindset away and just look at the nervous system and the body, your body goes, I don't know what that is. I'm uncomfortable. I know what this is, even though it's pain. I know what it is. So I'm stay
Yeah,
with,
it's familiar, it's conditioning.
I'm going to
So,
stay with what I know, because what I don't know, that's a little risky. And this is
yeah.
the language of your body speaking. So when we self-sabotage, if we look at it from a somatic sense, it's your body's natural and intelligent protective mechanism working. Now, it's just not in harmony or unison to the things that we want, and that's the inner work where you get to, whether it's reparenting or somatic practices, to actually align you to expand your comfort zone. You could say, as you're expanding, you're still staying grounded and you're not frazzled.
Mhm.
There's tons of things, and we can dive into it here, but that's how
Right.
I view self-sabotage. A lot of people are like, they're sabotaging, then they become aware of it, then they start shaming themselves and beating themselves for
Hmm.
having it. Why can't I just do it? And I'm actually going to pull this up on my laptop real fast, because I made
Right.
a post quite a while ago about how it's not all mindset.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
there's factors in your physical body that, for example, you're trying to stop eating donuts and you can't, like, that's your gut bacteria. It has nothing to do
Yeah.
with willpower. Your gut
Right.
bacteria is trying to survive, and it,
Hmm.
so things like that. But anyway, taking.
Yeah, it's actually three interesting things I brought up from you. I was actually reading this research piece yesterday about how when we go from like consuming large amounts of simple or processed sugar to consuming no amounts of sugar,
Mhm.
the body, or even artificial sugar, what happens is the body, the artificial sugar, starts to tell your body that you're lacking. Tries to fool it into thinking like, oh, I'm still getting sugar, but I'm not actually getting sugar. So it spikes your insulin levels in your body, which make you start like, which basically are trying to counteract the sugar that you're having. But you're so used to having sugar, but you don't have it now.
Right.
So you have a high amount of insulin, a low amount of sugar. So then you start binge eating further, because you're trying to overcompensate for what your body is so used to not having. So that's why like a gradual like depletion off of it is, I mean, how we'd want with anything, with any sort of conditioning, right? But I want to touch on one thing you talked about, which was change, where you said the body is so used to a particular way of feeling, storing trauma, processing judgment about the self, all of it. It's so used to receiving a certain set of like reactions towards it, that it doesn't want to change. And so the brain is the most neuroplastic organ that we have. So just to tell you folks, we all have neural wiring in our brain, which dictates like how we act in certain ways, etc. Now, while the brain is extremely capable of changing these neural pathways because it's neuroplastic, it doesn't necessarily like to change them. Because if you're doing something, it's just like, I've been doing this for so fucking long. Yeah, sure, I can get off my ass and do something. Sure, I can change something. But your brain's like, but it's convenient. I've been doing it for so long. It's what I know. And so coming back to, especially with self-sabotage, something that I've recognized is it comes from such a deep conditioning space that says, I think, and I have thought for 20, 30, 40, 50 years that this is what I'm worth. This is what I can allow into my life. This is what I am, capable of receiving. And that thought is all so limited that if something good comes along, it's like, whoa, 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 buddy. Listen, I'm used to driving my Fiat 500 for the last 40 years. You give me a Ferrari right now, you must be fucked. Like, I don't want to crash that thing. I don't want to pay for damages. I don't want the expense of everything. So it's basically like rejecting that better quality of what you're getting just to settle for, like you said, pathways that have been ironed into us over like so many years and so many decades.
Yeah.
So, what are some ways that you see self-sabotage showing up? Maybe, better than asking about clients, I'd rather ask, or each of us talk about our own experience, because I think that can be so much more valuable. So why don't you tell me about where you've seen sabotage in your own life?
I almost sabotaged my life. I've been on the brink of suicide multiple times. So they would say that would be the ultimate sabotage, right? When you go to that point, it's a little bit intentional. At that point, you cross that line, you're holding a gun in your mouth like I did. It's a little intentional. And when you get to that level of sabotage, there's something deeper going on. And what I found to be true afterwards, when I really started questioning, like, dude, what were you thinking? What's actually going on? Was that in my nervous system and in a little bit of my subconscious, I had this pattern of, if I'm in pain, I get attention. The bigger the pain I felt, the more attention I got. Now, where did I learn that? In childhood. I was trying to get mom's attention and she wouldn't give it to me. Then I fell and hit my head and then I get attention. Great, I got the attention that I wanted. And so enough times of that from the ages of when you're born to when you're 7 is when your brain's most neuroplastic. It wired it into my body. So that's why I went to those crazy extremes. That didn't make sense, but it makes sense looking at that. And more recent, more personal stuff, finance, dude. Like holding on to money and not spending it, even if it's back into the business to help more people, not just sitting with. And that has been one that I'm alchemizing now, even recognizing that in terms of value structure, my value before, it was in alignment with, it was, let's get ahead. I want to go all out, give everything I have, give the best of myself, let me love, let me show up. Those things aren't inherently wrong, but that was like the top of my value structure. So it didn't fit to be wise or to make myself feel safe or be a little bit more timely, titrated with things. It was all done now because that was in alignment with my values. Right. And a little bit of my identity of needing not enough. So I need to get it all done now. So that so there were multiple layers of it. And like I said, my work now is sitting in the safety of that. But what about you? Like what's some of yours?
Before I jump to me, I want to ask you one question, but I think many people don't actually realize. So you talked about your values and you talked about safety and what's actually existent within your body and those things not aligning.
Yeah.
And I want to really ask you this, Kevin, because I think this is important for people to really hear and understand. Who gives you those values? Where do those values come from? You know, a lot of the time, especially when you talk about finance, right? And our aspect around spending, our aspect about like what we're worth, investing in ourselves, etc. Our idea of relationships, you know, of like what kind of partners I could choose, what kind of life I'm meant to have. Am I meant to just get married, settle down, have kids? Am I meant to like, you know, live a life where we can both live freedom? All of those aspects of the value systems we have, right, that are imprinted in our mind. Who gives us those? Where do they really come from with our conditioning? I want to ask you, in your experience, like where does that actually come from?
I like to ask, whose voice is that? Is that you? Is that a commercial? Is that society? Is that your parents? And it could be a voice. It could be a pattern that you are, you know, or just trying to be like the other person because you don't know how to be like. So let me morph into what you are and the people that were especially growing up. And I think it's important to recognize the conditioning of that and then take ownership and go, okay, it's not me, it's not mine. Maybe I don't know where it came from, but it's not me, it's not mine. I don't want to choose it anymore. Even if I chose it and it was my own creation, it's not serving me right now. Right?
Exactly.
I've done, you know, in the 10 years being in like personal development, doing inner work, I've redone my values so many times.
Yeah.
Not necessarily conditioning for me. It's I chose it and now it's still not effective. Let me and that's okay too, right? Like we don't want to shame ourselves for where we're at. I do a lot of work with self-love and when you're on the path, doing the work, trying to get to the top of the mountain, simultaneously have to hold this paradox duality of, and I absolutely love where I'm at.
Yeah. No, and I think the important aspect of that is like, you know, knowing where we're at, being aware of what we need right now, where we're at, what our wounds are. You know, people try to avoid their wounds so strongly because we want to avoid the pain, right? Naturally, because nobody wants to witness something from your past that like traumatized you or hurt you. But because of that, we deflect and live a life of so much compensation, overcompensation, etc., trying to run, you know, either from the furthest way of the wound or trying to like dance around it so as to not embrace it and say, what is this teaching me through my body? What am I witnessing or waiting to see? How can this help heal me? And, you know, speaking about the body, I want to talk about my example of like self-sabotage. And our stories are so similar because I grew up, and I'd love for everybody to listen and see how this can track into your relationships and into your families as well. But I grew up the youngest of 5 in India. And, you know, by the time my mom had me, she was so much older that she was so emotionally fatigued to really care for me. And so what I wanted as a child was obviously my mother's attention, love, and affection. And I had 2 provider parents, both being emotionally incapable. that for me, I felt that my identity was so weak. I wasn't necessarily worthy of love. I wasn't necessarily worthy of care and affection, because if I was, someone would have truly showed up for me, right? Someone would have actually been there. As a child, we don't have the forebrain to be able to like distinguish, oh yeah, this is right and not wrong. Oh, daddy's got to do this because he has like X number of loans. When you're 1 year old and you're lying there, no one's hugging you, all you think is like, this is how I process me. Not like feeling or worthy of love, not feeling or worthy of like a strong identity, affection. So when I grew up, as I was growing, just like you, the only ways to actually get affection was when I was hurt. And my mother was such a good provider mom that whenever we were hurt, whenever I especially was hurt, she would absolutely be there for me in that moment. Not as a nurturer, not to hug me, hold me, rub my back or anything, but she'd be there with the Band-Aid. She stitched me up herself before. Like, she would be there on the spot with no fear. My mom has seen like terrible tragedies in her own life, so she has no fear. And the good part of that is that I had someone to take care of me in those moments. The bad part of it is that what I still sought in those moments wasn't coming. So I kept trying to elevate the intensity of those moments, right? And try to like get in more trouble. I actually became a violent kid, got kicked out of schools, all self-sabotage, because I was trying to push the boundary so much, saying I need to get some recognition from my family somehow. And ultimately, what's so crazy is when I moved out of home, and this is what I want to offer to everyone, is we think that when we move out of that connection with our caregivers, where we felt our primal conditioning, that it's all gone. But it actually follows us. It follows us in various aspects of work, sports, life, etc. I wrote this down in a post yesterday. And I said, I was an athlete and a soccer player, and prodigious. Everybody was like, this guy's going to be the star, whatever. And so people signed me for their clubs based on what they saw. And they were like, this guy has massive potential. I don't know if you guys have watched the movie Moneyball. I was literally like Billy Bean, the head coach, who was supposed to be this guy who was amazing. But when it came to the big moments, I always faltered. And I could never understand it. I either I didn't do well, or more importantly, I would injure myself, especially when it came to the finals, especially when it came to big moments. And it's so easy as a child when you injure yourself to say, oh, I'm hurt, therefore I can't perform, right? Like the ego is so strong in that moment that it justifies your inability to reach success. I mean, what could I have been if I was fit, if I was secure within saying, okay, whatever has to come, whether it's failure or success, it doesn't mean something about me personally. It's just showing me a way of where I can improve, what I can work on, etc. But we take that failure to mean something so personal about us. We feel so bad about, what we can achieve and not achieve, and we're afraid. Like, this is the biggest element I have seen, and you can tell me, Kevin, what you think. This is the biggest element of where I've seen self-sabotage show up, is that we're so afraid of failure. And so we would much rather chop our legs off before we get to that point where someone says, nope, sorry, you didn't make the cut. No, I'm sorry, you're just not good enough. No, I'm sorry, this is, you slipped up here, this is not good for you. And so we'd sabotage by incompleting a goal, procrastinating, not fully showing up, not being vulnerable, especially in relationships.
Yeah, man, that's a big one. It's an identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
We have a belief that I'm not good enough, and then you go out there and succeed and you're good enough, well, then that's not in alignment with your identity. One of the strongest forces in the human psychology is the need to be in alignment with the identity of who you think you are, and even if it's something.
Right.
So a lot of this is also identity work of recognizing like moving the needle forward of your identity as you expand.
Right.
Largely our identity is shaped by people that are close to our hearts. So you mentioned relationships, it's all the things with your exes and what you believe to be true about yourself from those experiences, and what they said to you that might have seeped in and that you took on as a belief that wasn't necessarily the full truth. Really looking at that stuff, because when we're in alignment with our identity, we're not necessarily scared of then that success.
Right.
That's who we are. We deserve it. Of course. And then it actually, so part of the getting out of your way is in shifting the identity to being like,
right.
Of course, and getting out of where you're at now to where you want to be, and time jumping, so to speak, into that and embodying it now. Don't put your future self in your future.
Right.
Is what I like to say on that is
Right.
what I see for my future. How can I be that now?
Yeah. Absolutely. And, part of like, talking about the future of where you manifest, I want to talk about a bit of the past, which is where like I talk about confirmation bias a lot, in our work, and people ask me like, what is that? Confirmation bias is this, it's phenomenally powerful. It's like the law of attraction, anything else. What you believe deep down inside you, you will make true. Just as Kevin just said, wherever your beliefs come, that's what you manifest. What you believe, you will make true. And the science behind it is that, just as I talked to you guys about this earlier in the session, where the brain likes to know things can be in patterns, can be in sequences, can be in an order which it can comprehend and understand. So if it's comprehending and understanding that I believe I'm not going to have success, I'm not going to have love, this relationship is going to happen like this person's going to cheat on me because I've had people cheat on me before, this person's going to leave me because no one really is meant to love me, then you will unconsciously make that true by manifesting it in different ways in your present moment. And that's how we make our beliefs become true. So one of the biggest things in terms of understanding where self-sabotage comes from, where confirmation bias comes from, is to evaluate, as Kevin said, what is your identity? What is my identity based on? And what are the beliefs that have even created this identity? Where have these beliefs come from? Whose beliefs are they? Like Kevin said, whose voice is that? Where have these beliefs come from? And the strongest place where they really come from, just to give you guys an idea and an understanding, is that they come from the ages of when you're like 0 to 7, when you're absorbing something so fast because you need to learn everything in your life in that short period of time. This is not just a human thing. This is an animal thing. I wanted to put a little turtle into the sand, just to give you guys context. I was putting a little baby turtle who was just born into the sand to go into the sea. And so I asked this guy, why don't I just put him into the water? Because it's so easy. The seagulls are not going to get him. And he said in the 6 minutes that this turtle goes from where you let him go into the water, he learns everything about his life. The sun, the sand, the direction, he processes everything, because that's when he saves it in himself. So as children, we're absorbing all of this shit from our environment, and we're making their stories our stories very often. Mm-hmm. And so we have to create our own sense of identity. We have to work through our own sense of, what makes us us. So Kevin, what I want to do, I want to move to the next section of what we talked about, which is, where does self-sabotage, if you can give people examples, we'll both try and give them examples of where they can see it. So a lot of people may not know this is what self-sabotage is, but now if we create some awareness, they may figure it out. Mm-hmm. So what are some ways you've seen self-sabotage in your clients' lives, in your life, etc.? Some ways that you can actively bring out, where people can recognize and be like, oh shit, now I know that that's what it is. Mm-hmm.
The best way we can identify where we're doing this on our own is looking at patterns that show up. Mm-hmm. Patterns show up. And the work that I do with helping people with their relationships, you could sit there and point the finger and blame, I just date narcissistic men or toxic people or whatever it is, and you still got 3 fingers pointing at the back. So where can you take some ownership in this? You might be fishing in the wrong pond. That's a small pond with dirty water. Right. You could be fishing in the ocean with a big fish. So where are you fishing is something to look at. But taking ownership of the pattern and saying, okay, well, what does this say about me? If we think about a mirror, you're not looking at the mirror, you're looking at yourself through the mirror. Mm-hmm. So that, especially in relationships, that person, well, how am I responding and reacting around this, and not looking at the person and looking at you? So that will show you a lot of yourself. And with the self-awareness is the step number 1. And once you have the self-awareness, you can start to see how you might be sabotaging some things, because now you're taking ownership, because now you see it in yourself. And especially in relationships, it's insecurities are one of the biggest things that get in the way. It creates jealousy. It creates a sense of controlling, so that let me control you and your behavior so that I can feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And it really does come back to I. Right. And yeah, I would say the the biggest one that I see is the insecurities, and it's from the hurts and the fears from the past. Something happened in my past, you know, either my father was like this, and then now they're saying doing something similar, so I think it's a similar situation when it's really just a completely different person. Your body does.
Mm-hmm.
Your body's like, this feels similar to when I got hurt in the past. I don't feel safe. Let me sabotage this.
Right.
Versus let's work through this together, which is what a healthy relationship is.
Yeah.
Often push people away because they're not there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? You're not there either. Nobody's there. We're here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so we can sabotage. I talked about this in a book that I wrote way back when. Book. And I talked about something called abandaholics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's somebody who's addicted to abandonment, which really they have in their body are releasing all of the chemicals in your body and all of the hormones for fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
Are thinking it's passion and intimacy and you're high.
Right.
Really a distorted reality with danger. You know,
Right.
workout, but it's so hot and heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Body's also like, this is gonna happen again, but
Yeah.
focusing on, oh my God, this person's so amazing, and you project something onto them, and then you need a high.
Mm-hmm.
Just like somebody who has a coke addiction, for example, or a serious chemical addiction to a substance, you're gonna seek that out in relationships. Now your visuals only have eyes for that. Somebody who comes in, like, oh, they're nice, they're a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that it's
Right.
because you're looking for a high.
Right.
It's and to put it in a different way, it's kind of like a giant fire versus hot coals.
Right.
It's not as flashy, doesn't emit as much light, but it's gonna burn longer. It's more sustainable than just a flash fire with leaves. If y'all campfire, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, am I making sense?
Yeah, no, it's I tell people about that all the time because I have so many, like, that's the biggest combination you see in the victim narcissist response, right? Is like, I'm addicted to this guy, he treats me like badly, or she treats me like this. And it's the same thing. It's the chemical reaction that, we're addicted to. And people don't realize, just as you said, your body's actually telling you you're in danger. But you've now, masked that with saying, okay, the adrenaline's just getting me really excited. Whereas adrenaline was initially also meant to be a running away from something drug, It's meant to be a, protect yourself and get into like a moment where you can like stand strong for yourself, etc. But I want to come back to some of the ways self-sabotage, like in relationships, because you know what, I want you guys to tell us also where you think you have seen some elements of self-sabotage in your life, especially either your relationships, work ways. Just a few words, throw into the comments where you find some elements of self-sabotage. But in relationships, one way I see it is in doubting your partner a lot. You doubt the relationship because, so the basis is that you don't, deep down inside, your wounded beliefs, not your real beliefs, your trauma and your wounded beliefs tell you that you don't deserve to have, a true relationship. You don't deserve to have love. You don't deserve to have like a successful, consistent relationship. And so you start to doubt your partner. When things start going well, especially, that's when self-sabotage kicks in, because that's not aligned with your past experiences, right? You have not experienced something that's gone consistently well in that space. So when it starts to go well, that's when the self-sabotage kicks in. And you tell yourself like, oh my God, my partner is like, he's spending more and more time at work. I'll bet he's like, speaking to his secretary or speaking to somebody else, or he's going somewhere else afterwards. Or you talk about, you think about your partner and them complimenting you a lot and them showing up for you. And you're like, oh my God, this person is just so full of shit. They want something from me. I've seen that a lot. And it's difficult to hear and process when, someone says to you, like, I feel like my partner is just full of shit. He's trying to compliment me and show up and I'm not attracted. Because again, the self-doubt tells us I don't deserve someone to really show up for me and love me. And, the biggest ways I see them also happening is criticism, criticizing a partner, blaming them, shaming them until they feel like, what, I got to get the fuck out of here. Then the relationship doesn't work. And then these people who, obviously all of us who believe, I don't deserve that success, we go back and make this story to everyone and say, see, you know what? I told you, fucking relationships suck. You know, there's no good guys or girls or people out there. There's the same story that happens every time. And it's just reliving that pattern because we haven't been able to change that.
What you're talking about is there's a saying that I don't believe is entirely true, but in this context, which is you can either be right or in love. You can't have both. And if you're always the right one,
right,
you know, you're going to push people away. Think about two people.
Right.
If we're always right, it's not going to work.
Right.
You know, so being open.
What movie did you get that from, Kevin? Tell me.
Wait, say again? What
movie did you get it from?
It wasn't from the personal development industry. But, yeah, it's true and it's not, right? Like sometimes you are right and you can be in love, but if we right all the freaking time.
Right.
Being willing to be the one that's wrong, being willing to be the one that's
yeah,
being willing to be the one that's like, teach me and help me learn.
Exactly, that's open. You know, the one that's open to consider discussion, consider like change, consider like, you know,
where
I'm coming from. And there's another piece to self-sabotage. Actually, I just want to let all of you folks know I was doing, again, like some more research on it. And it's called the approach avoidance conflict, which I think Dr. Judy Ho is the author of like this book called Stop Self-Sabotage, and she's a psychologist. She describes it as to how initially we want to approach something. Initially, we want to learn from something. We want to grow. We want to get it. But as we're going along the way, and the patterns of this, I believe, come so strongly back into our wiring, especially, I think, with caregivers who tell us that you're not going to get this until you do this. You're not going to make it unless you do that. You're not going to be loved, basically, in short form, unless you prove yourself to me. Mm-hmm. And so when we're going for something, we suddenly hear those voices in the back of our head saying, but I don't know if I can actually get it. What if I can't do it because I'm not there? What if I can't, excuse me, get married because I don't fully understand commitment? What if I can't fully show up for someone because I can't show up for myself? And then at that point, we go from the approach side to the avoidance side, which is where a lot of the time now we start to just like almost ghost the situation to some degree, where we're like, oh, you know, I'm leaning back. And that's what procrastination is, right? It's not being able to actually commit to the arduous nature of like doing the work, to the conflict in the moment, to having the deep discussion, to being approached to change, because the biggest aspect of where we talk about is that, you know, in our neuroscience, change is fucking scary. Yeah. And so changing from that pattern of, you know, I only get love when I prove myself. I only get success when I, you know, show up for someone in the way exactly that they wanted me to. Changing from that is scary as fuck. And I just want to add one last piece, Kevin, before I pass this on to you again. I had this student of mine, and it was one of the most beautiful moments I've ever had in my gauntlet experience. And she, for so long in the first couple of weeks, and this a lot of you may identify with this if you have, you know, if you've ever, you know, found yourself in a place of self-harm, you found yourself in a place where, you know, you've wanted to possibly end your existence, your life, your experience. And so she had gone through that in her life. She had been through a lot of trauma in her life. And as you were going through the gauntlet, most people, it takes like 2-3 weeks to jump into it, and then they actually start experiencing it. That's normal as well, like, you know, growing into it. But this was like week 5 or 6. And I was sensing that, you know, she wasn't fully like absorbing the aspect of saying, you know, you are capable of moving past these traumas because you are indeed lovable and magical, or what, you know, that whole concept. But it was such a resistance. And so as you were going through, I'm sure you must have felt this, but sometimes as like a coach and a therapist, you're like, oh my God, what does this mean about me if I'm not able to get this across completely, right? So then you start thinking about what can I do in an alternative manner? And we got into shadow work. And something happened to her when she witnessed someone else just like her. This is the magic of shadow work. She witnessed someone just like her who was so unwilling to see that she had value to her, to see that she could change, she could grow. And she said one simple thing. She came back to the session and she said, for 30 years, I have seen myself as someone who's traumatized, someone who's wounded, someone who's fucked up, someone who's hurt. And she said, I made that my complete identity. And I took that person into relationships. So whenever I met a partner, whenever I met a friend, whenever I had conversation with my parents, I was like, this is the person you're going to be talking to. The person who I think is eternally damaged and is a damaged product. And she said, for the first time in my life, I have recognized that to be something else is so scary. Even though the something else could be big and beautiful and expansive, she's like, sometimes I don't want that because it's so scary. Who will I be if I'm not this person?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like so blown away that she had that own like internal reflection, but it just validated for me sometimes how change, especially from a place of trauma, especially from a place of feeling victimized, from saying that I am damaged, I am this, and this is all I am, change from that can be so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why sometimes we will sabotage our lives just so we can stay within the shell of what we see and believe of ourselves. So, you know, that's it. It was just something marvelous for me to see, but also to recognize how much the fear of change can really handicap us, right?
Yeah.
And how do you see that? Like, you know, in the work that you do, what do you think about, you know, that aspect?
Yeah, it's what I was talking about earlier, and the words weren't coming to me. My brain's still turning on, but it was expanding, right? And riding edge of your comfort zone. What I was trying to say was feeling safe as you expand. Because when you are in that you just talked about, I'm not safe to be myself. I'm not safe to change. Because it's safe when I change, essentially. And I know this, so it's safe, even if it's painful. So it's the desire to change and the willingness to change. Ready is a lie. You'll never be ready. You got to make a decision. Then you decide to let it go. And in that process of expanding into the new you, regulating your nervous system and learning how to do that will help you integrate much more. Because you've got, you know, like, okay, I'm done with this pattern. I'm not going to do it anymore. And then you go out there for a few weeks, you're great. And then you go right back to maybe a little bit worse than it was before.
Right.
But the identity shift wasn't integrated. It was all willpower, and willpower doesn't last. So that's how I look at what you were describing is being safe to be somebody else, and knowing, and the biggest thing from the mindset perspective is that I'm not going to lose love. I'm not going to lose love if I be somebody else. Because that's our fear, is that we're not enough, and if we're not enough, we're not going to be loved.
Right.
So if we can say, well, I could be equally as loved, maybe more loved, if I was somebody else. We give our don't even sit at that as a belief. I just want you to open up to the realm, the possibility that could actually happen. Like play with, maybe, or if I was this person, would I lose love? Like look at it almost like you're brainstorming and mapping something out. Don't do it as like a do or die type of situation. And that start to explore what's possible there. And when you do that, you open your mind to it, you're actually able to grasp and go, okay, it's safe to be somebody else. I'm not going to lose love. Right.
And I think that's the baseline in a weird way of our entire existence sometimes, right? Is the concept of love, the love of oneself, the most important, because whether people are around or not, we always have the self to be with. And I want you to, Kevin's going to take us through a little exercise at the end of this, you know, about how to embody that feeling and to work through it as we talked about, because the body is so important when it comes to this aspect of like recognizing oneself, because it is the only physical piece that we can take with us every moment that we are alive. And people don't actually get that, is that, you know, and that's why we're trying to accumulate so many things and take so many things. The only thing you can actually take to your grave, the only thing you can take in every moment of your existence is your body. And that's why there's so much messaging that comes through our body. There's so much that our body is telling us. There's so much that our body is trying to teach us about what we're feeling. Like that feeling of anxiety when we're approaching, you know, approaching a challenge or approaching a goal, approaching success, approaching love. That feeling of anxiety is telling us that it needs to be heard. Not that it needs to be run away from, but that it needs to be heard and saying, what is it telling me? Am I afraid? Okay, what am I afraid of? What am I feeling that I'm afraid of? I'm afraid that, okay, if I achieve this, I'll be seen so differently. I'm afraid that actually if I choose this, maybe I'll be kicked out of my family.
Right.
I'm afraid that if I really go after this, maybe people won't see me the way I am before. And all of that is associated with that lack of love, because I think the problem in our conditioning is that love has been attached so strongly to the external.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept of love being attached or even inspired or created from the internal has been, whether it's through societal conditioning or familial conditioning, religious conditioning, all of it is kind of suppressed and lost. So, one thing that I want to ask you is, in that concept of self-sabotage, how can someone feel safer within themselves, Kevin, so that in those moments when they come up against, especially anxiety, so, doubt, anxiety, before they've approached the challenge on the way there, how can they create some safety within their body and how they feel?
Two things, two ways I like to do this. Number one,
Mm-hmm.
do it so fast you don't have time to think.
It's like the Brené Brown method, I think, right?
Body's like, oh, that wasn't bad. Whoa, okay, I could do that again. Because sometimes we just hype ourselves up in our head and we're overthinking. So there's only so much inner work to do. Sometimes you do have to move matter. We're in the third dimension. So take the action, right?
Right.
If that's not available to you, then it's dropping into the body and playing with your awareness, essentially. So you need to have a difficult conversation, and it's coming, and you're getting super anxious, and it's like overwhelming on your body, where you're losing a sense of center, you're losing presence. Just breathe is the last thing you want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Not what I'm telling you to do. So hey, there we go. What I like to do, because we're so in those moments, our mind is so loud and running so fast that we try to use our mind to change our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Adds fuel to the fire.
Right.
I like to, in those moments, remind myself to put the story aside for a second and almost go into the realm of without words. If you were an alien that didn't know language,
Mm-hmm.
dropped into this body, what will be going on? So you kind of have to treat this like a toolbox. One day, one thing will work. The next day, the other that won't work, and another thing will.
Mm-hmm.
So you got two options with this. You go internal with your awareness. So for everybody listening, if you're driving, don't do this. But for everybody else, close your eyes quick and drop in for a second. Just close your eyes and notice what sensations are inside of your body. Not emotions, but sensations. So for me, seeing my right leg is a little bit asleep. I just moved it. A warmth in my hands, a tension in my back. Noticing ease of breath right now. Pressure of the chair on my butt. I can feel my face, almost like the blood in my face. It's really weird. And you just notice what's inside of your body. Now, if you're too overwhelmed, that's just going to amplify it and have the adverse effect. That can be very grounding to just tap inward for a second and what's happening inside, without judgment, without trying to change anything, just what's here. If that's not accessible, or that one just like, nope, you go external. So for everybody tuning in, I want you to open your eyes and just with a soft, blurred gaze, move your head to the right and left and look around the room that you're in. Not at one particular thing, not with a laser sharp vision, but just kind of scan and around and observe where you're at. And if you find something that pulls your awareness, I want you to focus on it. And be with that object. And almost describe it to yourself. You know, if I'm looking at my pen, it'd be this gray sphere. There's black on the end to see that light reflecting off of it, multiple areas. Caps on the back. All of my focus is on this pen right now and trying to be with it. That will shift your awareness outside of yourself for a second. So you drop the mind story. Same thing with the internal. You drop the head stuff. You ground. That's a very quick way to ground yourself without trying to just breathe. And you'll then from that, you're grounded, reapproach it from if you want to share with the head, it is, I'm not going to lose love. Even if this person leaves my life, I'm not going to lose love. Especially if it is like a crazy conversation, right? Or even if they lash out at me, even if the worst case scenario, I'm safe, and my heart's still beating, got food and water, not being chased by an elephant, we're good. Because our nervous systems we're bored as a species in our bodies, and so we go to fight or flight with things like having conversations with people. When it used to be survival of life and death. Now that's not there. We live in the best time in human history to be alive, evolutionarily speaking, and we don't have to hunt for our food, so you don't need that as a response, but they show up in social settings.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you, Kevin. That was actually, I think it's so important for everybody to learn ways to just really ground themselves. I think we're so preoccupied by the hyper awareness that we think we need to have to everything that, again, our awareness now becomes attached to everything around us and is lost from within. And these simple exercises, I think, are so important in bringing us back to our reality, bringing us back to our moment. Particularly around self-sabotage, I think, excuse me, if we're talking now about like what are some ways that I can deal with, the self-sabotage coming up in the moment, I think one of the biggest things is compassion. Wouldn't you agree? Like compassion of just recognizing, okay, I think people ignore the power of awareness. They ignore the power of knowing what I'm feeling right now, because most of us don't really pay attention to what we're feeling, which is why we just get carried away and our emotional freedom is lost. It's attached to like the circumstance. But when we create awareness to what am I feeling, just as you were saying, what is within my body, what am I feeling, where is this coming from? Cutting off that train of thought of like, going down the rabbit hole by adding compassion to the mix. And by saying, you were hurt in your childhood. It was difficult for you. People didn't just accept you the way you are. They made you do something or be someone to accept you. That's heavy. That's painful. And I see you where you are, just as you were saying. But to add compassion, to say, but now you have the chance to accept and create that identity, as you brought up before, for yourself. So, I want to jump in at the end and do an inner child exercise around this, but what do you think about adding that value of compassion in those moments where you feel, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this or not, instead of saying you can do it, push it, so like driving yourself further, like a lot of people would do. And, that whole concept of toxic positivity, as we talk about, which in itself is such a vague thing, but instead of just negating the feeling in the present to say, just push, push, push. Instead, what do you think compassion can do in that moment?
It's compassion for self, saying, am I going to die? No. Do I got this? Yes. Cool, let's do it.
Right.
It's just having okay, this is a lot. Can I do this right now? It's uncomfortable, but I can do it. Okay. A lot of times we just don't like uncomfort. And we think uncomfort is this big, crazy thing. I'm just uncomfortable right now, but I got this. Yeah. It's like going to the gym. Okay, there's a lot of weight, but I can get it. I'm not going to hurt myself. Now, if it's too heavy, if it is too uncomfortable from a somatic lens and looking at your nervous system, you can hurt yourself. You can re-traumatize yourself.
Right.
That's why it's important to do this in smaller bits in the beginning so you can build up the strength to then do it with bigger things. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to not do something.
Right.
As well. So it's discernment, because then you're like, okay, well then when is it okay to push and when is it okay to not to? That's your own discernment with your body and being honest with yourself. And for those that maybe have had codependency, you have a lack of identity of self because you're so external focused for so long on other people and their needs You don't know what you
Right.
So like in building a relationship with another human, you're gonna have to build a relationship with yourself and understand where your limits are, and et cetera.
Right.
It just takes time, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kevin. One thing I want to talk about is where the reparenting aspect comes in, because I mean, our work on our side focuses a lot about reparenting, about recreating those beliefs that were created through conditioning. And so one thing I want to do, I'm going to steal a few minutes here, Kevin, if you're cool with that. One thing I want to do.
I got another meeting.
How long do you have?
9 minutes.
9 minutes?
Yeah.
Awesome. Wait, so before I do that, before you hop off, Kevin, why don't you tell everybody about, I know you're starting in a program soon, right? Coming up at the end of this month.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about that for anybody who wants to dive into like similar work? Kevin and I do very similar work. Kevin's program is starting at the end of the month. So Kevin, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about what that program is coming up?
Self-sabotage in your love life. Negative patterns happening that you don't want to happen anymore. We do the inner work using the mirror of your childhood and your love life to do the work on yourself, to change the identity, the nervous system. We work with trauma-informed practices to fall in love with yourself, to get clear on what it is that you do want so that you can make that happen in life. And it's not just for single people that have negative patterns. It's also if you're in a relationship, you want to save the relationship, you are 100% of the solution. And if you take ownership of that, magic can happen. I've seen people manifest their dream partner that they're now married to. I've seen people get out of the toxic cycles of being with narcissistic people for their entire life. Magic happens in this space. If you want to know more about it, link is in my bio. But just being.
Why don't you put your bio in the chat, Kevin? Why don't you, just for like
heartguy.com. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, just throw that in the comments so everybody has that and they can visit it.
Definitely.
So as Kevin just said, if you want to see the work that he's doing, there's he's gonna put that in the comments. Did he put it in? There you go, Hawkeye.com. That's a program that he's launching again for what, the 19th time, I believe you said?
Yes, we've had hundreds go through it. This is the 19th time. We're adding tons more to it with trauma-informed stuff. We're also adding stuff about your relationship with the divine and creating magic in your life. Beyond just self-love and healing trauma, also now affectation and how do you build a healthy relationship. So we're adding a lot to it. The group starts in a week and a half, I think. So the 29th, which is a Monday. And yeah, all the details are on that link. And if you got any questions, you can DM me. But magic happens when you get in that space, just being in the energy of other people doing the work specifically about their love life.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for jumping on. Do you have anything else you want to say to the crew who's been on here?
Okay, thank you for hosting me today. It's been an awesome conversation. I've learned some things. And yeah, I would say for everybody, before I sign off, just get curious. Instead of being frustrated that you're self-sabotaging, get curious maybe as to why and sit with the question. Don't just ask why. Something might come through. Also, just immense gratitude, honestly, and returning back to reality in the present moment and being present when we don't need anything and we move at a different pace and not sabotage. So.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for offering that. I'm so grateful that people get access to like work like this, to be able to hear you speak, to be able to hear us have conversations. So thank you very, very much, Kevin. Thanks for showing up. I'm sure we're going to do this again.
Definitely.
Wish you the best, buddy, for your program coming up at the end of this month, getting into like the busy holiday season. I hope there's a lot of people who want to jump into that and say, this is what I need for myself to heal, to grow, and that they reach out to you. So
thank you. Y'all hit the link in the bio. Message me. I'll talk to y'all later. See you.
Absolutely. See you, Kevin. Thank you, man. All right, so I'm going to do a quick inner child meditation if you guys really want to. And I'm going to talk about a few things that we didn't get to touch on. I was going to say touch on and attract, I think. But I'm going to touch upon the aspect of trauma with self-sabotage. So trauma can be very covert, which is very hidden and underground. It can be very overt, which is very obvious. And so we think trauma is only when someone hits me, abuses me, violates me, emotionally, physically, any of those things. That's very obvious. But trauma can be very silent. It can live inside, and it can show up as someone just not showing up for you when you really needed it. It can show up as someone just not being available for you when you really needed a hug, love, protection, and care, and they were just too busy with their own coping mechanisms of maybe alcohol, sex, drugs, other people, they were in their own fights. I mean, if you think about it, when you're a child and you're born, the first idea of love for you, the first idea of what you deserve is what someone will give you, right? Because you have no other idea of how to create your identity. You don't go to school, you don't need other people. It's basically your parents or caregivers, the space you're in, and the love and treatment that you receive. I've talked about neuroception a lot. I'm not going to bring it up again, but it is really how we create our identity of ourselves that actually, in that moment, is what drives us throughout our lives. So when you think about self-sabotage, if you have been through all of these versions of trauma, so if you come down to basically having these three big wounds, abandonment, rejection, and invalidation, which inevitably, this is how all kinds of trauma and pain really show up, is through these baseline wounds, then what you will do, think about this, okay? This is what self-sabotage is. If you had to squeeze in abandonment, rejection, and invalidation into self-sabotage, what would it be like? It would be you abandoning yourself before someone abandons you again. It would be you rejecting yourself before someone rejects you again. It would be you invalidating yourself before someone invalidates you again. You see that? And it's so difficult to even say, like, why would I fucking abandon myself or reject myself or invalidate myself? We would, because the memory of that trauma of someone having done it to us is so painful. It's so heavy that I never want to feel like that again. And so what I will do is I will get in my own way. I'll slip on a banana peel before I get to that point where someone can say, sorry, you're too late. So then I can tell myself, oh, this fucking banana peel. Or, oh, I guess I just slipped up or fucked up again. And it can be very conscious, as we said, where we know we're doing something consciously. Like, I have a project to finish and I'm just going to keep watching like TV or whatever because I don't really want to do that project. I don't really want to get to it because I don't know if I deserve success, if I deserve a good grade, if I deserve, you know, appreciation by my boss. So I'll just reduce the possibilities of that by me stepping into my own way right now. Also, I will say, my neighbor has chosen fucking today to do all of her fucking vacuuming. Like, I don't know when the last time she did it was, but she chose today when I'm on a fucking live call right now. And all I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear it. And it's very distracting. So I might scream out loud and be like, shut the fucking vacuum off. But excuse me if I do that. Clearly she didn't hear me yet. But anyway, back to this conversation. So then what happens in the present moment is, thank you, Mahogany. I love you. Mahogany is a student of mine currently on the Gauntlet. Thank you very much for letting me know. I'm glad that it isn't like you guys can barely hear it. Elizabeth also is another student of mine, different batches. So what I'm going to talk to you right now about is, okay, if I have these traumas and I have these wounds and they show up for me in the moments of like self-sabotage, they show up for me in the moments of like I've said, me abandoning, rejecting, and validating myself before I can actually do something about it, heal it. What should I do in that moment? And here's what I want to offer you. And this is what I take people through, and it's reparenting. Going back to that. Can you stop vacuuming for 20 minutes? Sorry, I really had to do that because there was a moment of silence. But you go back to that version of yourself. You go back to that childhood version of yourself in there. And that's where you recreate the story. That's when you change what you believe about yourself and what actually happened to you. So what I want to do right now with you guys is a little exercise. We're going to do an inner child meditation for a few minutes, 5 or 6 minutes. Before we jump into that meditation, what I want you to do is I want you to put into the comments. Oh, Greg's also another student of mine. Nice to see all you guys like chatting here amongst yourselves. I want you to put into the comments where you see, like I said before, self-sabotage showing up right now. And you don't have to describe the whole thing. I just want you to put in like 2 or 3 words just for you to put it in. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm creating memory association. So I'm trying for you to bring into your present moment where it's coming from. Okay, so like let's think about, okay, where it shows up. Self-sabotage, for me in particular, someone talked about their anxiety reaching out to like very attractive women. And I know for me, when I was younger, especially, that would be something I would be really anxious about. It's like going up to like the most attractive person that I found attractive, whether they look like whatever, a tennis ball, or whether they look like, you know, a stick. It didn't matter. It's like what I thought was attractive. And I would always hold myself back. So, you know, for some people, it's like, oh, that's my dream job I want to apply for. And that, you know, I held back. Tony, I know, and thank you for being vulnerable because I saw your comment and I just said it. But just throw in a few words. Okay, I see forming new relationships. Beautiful. I see painful thoughts reoccurring. Okay, so where do you see that actually showing up? Like, is it stopping you from a particular goal? What is the goal that you stop yourself from achieving? Dating and carrying out my mission on earth. Okay, beautiful. If you want to think of where it can possibly stop you, just think about what is my goal really for myself. Being seen. Okay, amazing. Nicole, thank you. Another one of my former students. Love you. Unhealthy eating, lack of exercise, choosing partners. Okay, keep these coming, guys. So now when you write these down, I'll give it another 1 or 2 minutes for people to actually like regurgitate and bring out some stuff. Attracting a secure partner. Okay. So now this is very surfacial, just to let you know. Like the depth of this I do in very intense work, which is what I do in the gauntlet. I do work which is a little more active than this in the new community group that I launched called the Emotional Freedom Collective, which the first live session is coming up next week. We just opened up the group, and it's an amazing group for access. You can join literally for just $1. But the intense version of this work is going really, really deep to theta level meditation. So I do that with my students in the gauntlet. It's very intense, but we're going to do a surface level of this that you can access. So a lot of you have written down things, right? Leaving romantic relationships before left. Christine, thank you. Another one of my former students. Love her very much. So now, if you have these answers for yourself, I want you to do one more. This is the next part of the exercise. So you see where the sabotage is happening, okay? I want to, not finishing what I start, okay, beautiful. I want you to now think of the next step. Go one step back. You have, okay, where it's showing up. Now I want you to go back to, what does it remind me of? What does it remind me of in my past? In the sense, take the goal. Take the goal in itself, right? Take the goal of what you really wanted to do and ask yourself, where did I try to get this before? Something like this. Where did I try to achieve a goal? Where did I try to make connection? Where did I try to date people? Where did I try to get love in my childhood? Where did I try to commit myself to something? Where did I try to attempt to make success? Where did I try to do any of those things? But I was shut down. Use those words, where I was shut down. So someone either pushed me to shut down, someone either said to me when I was really young that you're not lovable. Someone actually didn't show up for me when I tried to say, I'm worthy, give me a hug. And they were like, no, I'm busy, which basically means you're not worthy. So I want you to think about that for a second. And now I want you to close your eyes. I want all of you to close your eyes together, and we're going to do this for a second. So you have this moment in the present moment where you're facing your resistance, where you're facing your challenge, where you're facing the self-sabotage. As you're sitting with yourself in this quiet, in this moment, I just want to say to you, this all comes from somewhere. So I want you to hold my hand, and we're going to go to the somewhere where it comes from, okay? I want you to trust me. I'm here to love you, to show up for you, to protect you in this moment. And so I want you to trust me. Hold my hand. We're going to go back and back. And as we go back, just allow yourself to see and to trust what you come to. Keep your eyes closed. Don't need to write anything or say anything yet. I want you to just think and process. As we're going back, I want you to think of, where is this situation? Where has it been similar? Where is this pain of feeling this rejection or self-abandonment? Where has it come from before? Who in your life told you you couldn't do something? Who in your life only paid attention to you when things were bad? Where in your life did someone say, it's going to be too hard? You're not going to be able to do it. You don't deserve it. This is not for you. Just do what I tell you. Just go as I say. Where in your life do you feel that there was a chain around your ankle when you wanted to step forward? Where in your life, when you were young, let's go back really young, when you were a kid, when you were a child, just wanting to be free, just wanting to express yourself. You're still holding my hand. And I want you to show me, while you're holding my hand, I want you to point out to me where you saw this in your life. How old were you at that point? What is it that you really wanted at that moment? What did you want to be? What did you want to see? What did you want to do? What did you want to feel? What did you want to have? Was it love? Was it support? Was it success? Was it appreciation? Was it validation? Was it recognition? Was it just being seen? Was it just being heard? Was it just being appreciated? Was it just being recognized for who you were? What is it that that little version of you wanted at that point? I want you to truly, while your eyes are closed, recognize what that little version of you wanted. So this is very important. And now, I want you, you're holding my hand, you're with me, this grown-up adult version of you. I want you to let go of my hand, and I want you to walk closer to that little being, that little version of you that wanted all those things. I want you to lift them up into your arms. I want you to hold them close, close to your chest. Rub their back, play with their hair, recognize them. I want you to truly see them just as they are, no judgment, whatever they're wearing or not wearing, whatever they're doing or not doing. I want you to just see them truly in this moment. I want you to listen to the sound of their voice. I want you to hear what they're saying. And now, in this moment, I want you to honor them by giving them what they really wanted and deserved. If they want love, give them love. If they want recognition, see what they're doing, how they're playing, how they're working, whatever it is they're doing, and appreciate them for it. If they want to be validated, recognize them. Point out the things that they're doing. Make them know that you want to pay attention to do it because you love them, because they're important. But whatever they're doing, whatever they want from you, give it to them in this moment. Honor them. Let them feel the validation, the success, the belief that they are worthy of your time. They are worthy of your commitment. They are worthy of your attention, your love, your recognition. Give them that in this moment. Show them in this moment that they are unconditionally deserving of love. They don't need to be something. They don't need to do something. Let them be seen, be heard, and be validated by you. Rub their backs. Give them a kiss on their cheek. And before you put them down, I want you to look into their eyes so you can pull them out of the hug, see them eye to eye and say, I need you, little one, to really show up for me now in the present. I will promise I will show up for you because I know you're inside me, but I need you to motivate me, support me. I need you to continue to guide me this life that we deserve. To show me that we don't need to be afraid of success. We don't need to be afraid to try. Because whether or not you fail or succeed, whether you grow or shrink, whether you're big or small, I love you. And I want you to remind me of that in my life today. With that, give that little inner child a little kiss. Put them down. Let them run off on their own to play. And whenever you're ready, I invite you to come back into the present moment. I want to ask you, how do you feel after doing that? How do you feel after doing that little exercise? Just put in a few words, a word if you want. And just let me know how you feel in the present moment about your life based on you visiting the past and where you came from. I see some people are grateful. I see some people are feeling love, bawling, nauseous. Yeah, it's scary because we haven't visited that parts of ourselves at all. Sobbing, that's something that'll happen. Feel seen, content. Someone actually loves you. Yeah, and it's you. You will always have yourself to make your best friend, to make your most valuable counterpart, someone to really show up for. So, acceptance, this is beautiful. Just read also what other people have said, because maybe there are things that other people have had that you also have, that you've seen in this moment. So whenever you have those difficult moments, whenever you're having those moments of self-sabotage or challenge, always remember that the reason you're really having them is because there's a little version inside of you from way back when whose ankle is actually being tied by a chain. And by you going back to them to help release that chain, to see them, to love them, to validate them, you in the present moment can show up so much more different. You can invite the love and motivation into your life because you're letting go of that from where they were deep down in their past. Always go back to those little child meditations. And if you want to do this with us, two things. One, well, the gauntlet only restarts in January because now we're filled up with our batches, but I do this with my students and take them through the reflections of their meditations and like break down where those belief systems come from their childhood. We go really, really deep, which is really important to create that change. But if you want just an exposure to this, to these inner child meditations, to regulating the nervous system, to understanding the challenges and how they show up in your life, then I will say join the Emotional Freedom Collective, which is a new membership group that we just launched. I think I talked about it earlier today, but for those of you just jumped on, you can join for just $1 right now. And we're doing our first live session next week, which is about conditioning in various aspects, social, societal, religious, communal, and most importantly, parental. So the familial conditioning and how it actually has influenced us to be who we are today, how it creates this identity of what we can and can't do and the beliefs that we have about ourselves. So that's my first live call. You will, before you even have that, as soon as you join the membership, you'll have a mini course to do. 5 sessions that you can just study and learn on your own, get yourself prepared for inner work. It's a really easy barrier to entry with inner work. It's really easy with a low barrier, easy commitment. You show up for those sessions. You have recordings if you can't show up for the sessions. It's just a very powerful way to stay in touch with the inner work. Christine's so excited you're going to come back. One of my former Gauntlet students was coming back to be a part of this community. It's going to be big and beautiful. I'd be more than happy to have all of you on there. And I'm so excited to be able to connect with all of you, to just give you value that my mentors and people have given me. I feel like that's my purpose, to just take what I've received and to offer it to the world continuously. So if you're on there, I'll be so happy to see you guys. Check the link in bio and you'll check it out. It's called the Emotional Freedom Collective. And I'll be so excited to see you guys live next Tuesday. And if not live on the Inner Work Emotional Freedom Collective, and you'll get like a journal to work through, other stuff. Join our Facebook group and start interacting there because there's so much support. I put out in the info about the live and everything else we're doing. So looking forward to all of it with you guys. And for those of you who jumped on today, all of you, I am so grateful. I really enjoyed this live, actually. We talked about a lot of like the educational side of it, the neuro biological side of it. We talked about so much of, understanding where it comes from within the mind and the body. And now we have to create change in the present moment. Remember, compassion, so important for you. Compassion is so important because it can give you the love that you need to say, okay, now I want to move forward. Now I recognize where I came from and that's okay. But now I want to give us love. Now I want to move forward. And throwing those inner child meditations in there with that, it's a cocktail for success, guys. Truthfully, it's a cocktail to really help you and grow. And Nice Nuyu Soul, I don't know if that's your name, but that's so beautiful. You said you were riding your bike the entire time and you had tears streaming down your face. That's what I want for people. I want people to actually have that ability to bring out the emotions that are hidden underneath. And I'm so grateful you're here. I'm so grateful for all of you. Thank you, Greg. I love you. I will see you. Your session is, I think, tomorrow with the gauntlet. But I love all of you guys so much. And I'm so grateful that you joined. And I'm so grateful that you saw value and healing in these meditations. Sending all of you a lot of love, a lot of hugs, a lot of special energy for you and your inner child. The more love you have for your inner child and yourself, the more you'll be able to give. Love all of you, and I hope to see you on the Emotional Freedom Collective, and I hope to see you on the live next Tuesday. See you guys. Have a beautiful day or a night, wherever you're at. Bye.